o'clock in the afternoon. The special troops are around us. So we expected that probably these guys will hit us. But so this time something is going on. I heard there was some shooting sound, dun 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 like that.
Was there panic? How did people react?
I just ran away through some very small alleys because I knew that area very well. What I heard is many people were killed. That was what I heard later on.
And what did you think at the time when they started shooting?
I have two feelings. Number one, scared. Number two, I'm so angry.
For the first 3 days until May 21st, the reports that we heard were that it was dangerous to be outside. So we would go outside, but we didn't go out very much.
Linda Lewis was an American student living with a Korean family in Gwangju.
We and our neighbors in the evening could go up on the roof of our house, where in Korean houses you have a platform where you store kimchi pots, and we could sort of look toward the city and see clearly there were fires burning, there was a lot of smoke, there was shouting, there was honking of horns, and then actually there was so much tear gas in the city that we were forced to go back inside again.
In the lulls between the fighting, when members of the family Linda was staying with did manage to go out, they came back with gruesome tales.
The mother in the family I was staying with had gone out to actually go to the bank downtown. It's about a 15-minute walk from our house. And she came running back in, and she was into the house, and she was semi-hysterical. She had just been walking on the main street, and it was full of soldiers, and she had seen a soldier bayonet a student, and then the body was dumped on a truck.
Such acts of violence by the army served only to raise the tensions in Gwangju. Some of the students began to arm themselves, and by May the 21st, paratroopers sent in to quell the protests had been forced to withdraw to the city's edge. Gwangju was effectively left in the hands of armed citizen militias.
The people of Gwangju begin to relax again after 4 days of violence. What started as a protest rally against martial law ended in hand-to-hand fighting with paratroopers sent in to maintain order. First, students and their supporters armed themselves with bamboo sticks. After raiding a police armory, they now have guns, grenades, and over 40,000 rounds of ammunition.
What did the streets look like at that stage? I mean, on maybe the first occasion that you walked out after the army had left.
I remember thinking it was really trashed, because in the street fighting, people picked up, broke the concrete on the sidewalks to throw things, and police boxes. It was clear there had been the police boxes had been burned. The TV station also had been burned. There obviously had been a lot of street fighting. No public buses were running. Nobody had private cars, so there weren't very many private cars, and the only vehicles on the streets were commandeered trucks and vehicles that had rebels, citizens militia with weapons going through town. So most people were walking or bicycling. And by the 23rd, 24th, a kind of a festive atmosphere about it. People were cleaning up. There wasn't really any signs of looting that I saw, or any violence, or I didn't feel that it was dangerous to go out personally.
Was there a certain dread about what was going to happen next?
Well, yes. And I mean, I'm not very brave. I really wasn't very interested in getting hurt, as most people weren't. But after the days when we were walking around and could see that actually the army had been pushed to the edge of the town, sort of made people feel that people in Gwangju were the only people in the country sort of brave enough to stand up to the military government. And so there was a lot of civic pride.
Having a party.
I'm having a
party, a girls' party. Yay, where are your drinks, girls?
It is nothing short, but an amazing day today.
I wake up, sleep, eat, wake up, sleep, eat.
My name's Tony Nicholson. I'm a fitness coach and I'm an actor.
You want some coffee? No. You want some coffee? No.
Good morning, 9 o'clock. You're watching Kay Burley at breakfast, encouraging the public to ignore lockdown. That's what the Shadow Foreign Secretary has told us this morning about her view on how Dominic Cummings' actions may affect the public. The Prime Minister, meanwhile, is facing another tough day as he prepares to answer MPs' questions on his government's coronavirus response. Also on the show, we'll be joined by the first British astronaut to go into space, Helen Sharman, as we look ahead to the SpaceX and NASA rocket launch later on today. It's Wednesday, the 27th of May. Pressure at the top. The Prime Minister to face questions over how he's handled the pandemic as more of his party turn against Dominic Cummings.
My big worry about what's happened over the weekend is that I think increasingly people will feel that they can't trust the guidance that the government is putting out.
Anger in Minnesota as 4 police officers are sacked after a black man dies in custody. The mayor calls it wrong on every level.
To the black community, to the family, I'm so sorry.
Hope for the family of Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe, with Iran set to announce a decision on whether she'll be granted clemency.
That there were going to be 3,000 people released on clemency. Decisions have been made, so we're hopeful that we're on that list.
Twitter row. Donald Trump enters yet another spat, this time with the social media giant itself for fact-checking him. And ready for liftoff. The hours tick down to an historic space launch from Florida. Good morning. The Prime Minister is facing questions on all fronts today. He'll be quizzed by MPs over how the government's handled the pandemic so far, as pressure grows from within his own party to sack his chief advisor, Dominic Cummings. More than 30 Conservative MPs are among those calling for the advisor's dismissal. Boris Johnson will face questions later on the roles and responsibilities that Mr Cummings has within government. Earlier, the Shadow Foreign Secretary Lisa Nandy told me that she's concerned that the actions of Dominic Cummings could encourage the public to break the rules.
My big worry about what's happened over the weekend is that I think increasingly people will feel that they can't trust the guidance that the government is putting out. And it's one of the reasons why Labour hasn't called for Dominic Cummings to be sacked. The Prime Minister said he's not going to sack him, but we've said if he isn't going to be sacked, then the Prime Minister must clear up a number of outstanding issues about how it was that his own advisor appeared to breach repeatedly the guidance that he'd written. Otherwise, we're not going to see public confidence restored, and my big fear is that people will start to just use their own instincts, as Dominic Cummings said he did himself, and that will leave the country in a very bad place.
Well, we've heard from the Prime Minister. He says that his advisor didn't break the rules. We had a very lengthy news conference in the Rose Garden of Downing Street. End of. Don't we need to move on now and talk instead about how we get our country out of lockdown?
Yeah, I mean, I think we do. We haven't just got the public health crisis that we're currently dealing with, but we've also got a huge problem in relation to what we do now to try and get the economy back on track. Just in the last few days, a major company that you probably know, Kay, Shearings in Wigan, went into administration. Hundreds of job losses here, thousands around the country, and some of those employees have worked for the company for 25 years. This is quite devastating. So we do need to move on, but we need to move on in a way that the public can have confidence about the advice that they're being given and the decisions that are being taken. And if there's one rule for government advisors and one rule for the rest of us, people will not have confidence and they won't follow the guidance. So the Prime Minister urgently needs to clarify.
Also on the programme for you this morning, Plaid Cymru's Westminster leader Liz Saville-Roberts told us that she thought that the Prime Minister made an announcement on the reopening of schools in order to bury the Dominic Cummings story.
The schools in Wales, the rules apply to the schools in Wales. I understand that many of the schools in England as well are operating, they're deciding whether they're going to follow by these rules come next week. It's evident that we have to make sure that everybody is safe as possible, and we have to bear in mind as well children's safety, the teachers' safety, and the fact that the children will go home to families as well. Again, I felt the Prime Minister was making an announcement about schools as something that he could throw out there to cover up the fact that he was actually protecting his chief advisor. Now, that in itself is deeply worrying as well, when you hear this policy that seems to be made on the hoof, again, for one man's welfare, when I would expect the government to be prioritising the welfare of every citizen.
Joe Pike is with us. Hey, Joe, what do you think?
If we're really honest, Downing Street do not care what Liz Saville-Roberts or Lisa Nandy think, because they're opposition parties and the government have a majority of 80. They're more concerned by what their own backbenchers are saying, but actually in terms of the number approaching 40, I think, of Conservative MPs who want Dominic Cummings to go, I don't think they are wildly worried, partly because there's no one that prominent, no big names in that list, but also because they don't think this is being coordinated. They do not think this is a sort of concerted effort to get rid of Mr Cummings, and they're hoping we are past the peak of the Cummings crisis. However, there are various unknowns. One, are there going to be more MPs speaking out? Two, are the polls going to show more sort of a continuation of this dip in confidence in Boris Johnson and his government? Three, is anything going to come out of the police investigation that Durham Constabulary are doing? And then four, this big unknown, what is the impact of the Cummings controversy on public behaviour? Will possibly the public now start to flout the rules because of his actions? Will they try and use the sort of Barnard Castle defence if they get caught by police? That is unknown. We're going to hear from the Prime Minister at 4 when he appears before the liaison committee, this super committee in Parliament, via video link for 90 minutes. Then after that, Matt Hancock, we understand, will be chairing the Downing Street news conference. We expect the focus will be on track and trace, the government trying to move our attention to track and trace, to some schools going back with primaries Year 1 and 6 and reception next week in England, but perhaps people won't pay any attention if new things happen on Cummings.
Super committee, I like that. I'm going to steal that. Nice to talk to you, Joe. Thank you. 4 police officers have been fired after the death of an unarmed black man in Minneapolis, which has caused large protests. In a video of the incident, George Floyd can be heard gasping for air as a police officer knelt on his neck. He died after being taken to a hospital. The mayor of Minneapolis apologised for the incident yesterday.
To the black community, to the family, I'm so sorry.
Latest from our US correspondent Greg Milam joining us.
Those 4 officers, including the one who was seen to be kneeling on the neck of George Floyd, the initial police report into this incident said it was simply someone resisting arrest in medical distress. It was only when that video was posted, only a few hours later actually, by someone who was standing watching, that we really saw what went on and for how long that officer was kneeling on George Floyd's neck, and Mr. Floyd can be heard saying that he can't breathe. Other people who are standing there are urging the officer to release the pressure because they could see what was happening. They could see Mr. Floyd go limp and apparently unconscious before an ambulance arrived and took him away. And as you say, he later died. There's been that apology from the mayor. There are a number of investigations, including one by the FBI, and those officers have been fired. It's not enough for a lot of people, and we saw in the last few hours a huge crowd gathering in Minneapolis to march, to protest about what had happened. And during the course of that protest, there was some tension, some confrontations between the police and some of the protesters outside of a police station, tear gas fired by the police, not doing a lot to lower temperatures amid that protest. And we've seen so much, haven't we, over the last few years, incidents like this, and a lot of people's memories going back to New York in 2014, and that phrase, "I can't breathe," used back then by a man called Eric Garner, who died after being put in a chokehold by police officers. No one was charged then. And we've seen so many incidents, and that's why that anger boils over, because people see that things aren't changing. And often it's only when video emerges of one of these incidents that they really get the attention people feel they deserve.
Donald Trump has entered a new Twitter row, and this time it's with the social media giant itself. It comes after Twitter fact-checks some of the president's tweets. Ashna Hurinag has more on the story for us. Hello to you, Ashna. What happened?
Yeah, it's interesting, Kay. For the first time, it appears that Twitter is calling out the president for some of his controversial comments. This all revolves around 2 tweets in particular, the first of which he claims that mail-in ballots are substantially false, and the second one says that 2020 presidential election is supposedly rigged. But what we're really interested in is that blue embedded link that Twitter has put in there, urging readers to click on it to get the facts. And when they do click on it, it takes them to a fact-checking page where it cites multiple media outlets saying that these claims are unsubstantiated and that they're all false. The president, unsurprisingly, has kicked back at this, saying that Twitter is interfering in the next presidential election, and he says that they are stifling free speech. We know the president is no stranger to causing controversy online and making his views known, but this is the first time that a social media platform, at least, is saying that his claims are misleading. But Twitter themselves will be so aware that his more than 80 million followers sometimes do go to his site and drive traffic to his page because they know that he gives outrageous comments on occasion. But they want to balance up with people having the right to exercise their free speech whilst also protecting them from misleading information.
OK, thank you. The family of Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe are hoping the jailed British woman will receive clemency today. The British woman has been in jail in Iran since 2016, when she was arrested and convicted on unspecified national security-related offences. She was furloughed from prison earlier this year due to the coronavirus pandemic and is currently staying with her parents in Iran. Her husband told me earlier he is now hopeful that she could be pardoned.
The Supreme Leader at the weekend announced that there were going to be 3,000 people released on clemency. Decisions have been made, so we're hopeful that we're on that list. Yeah, it feels like we're quite close. It feels like things could still go wrong. We've had a number of times where we've been down to the prosecutor's office and told to come back in a week's time, so that might be happening again.
Watching Kay Burley at breakfast. Coming up next for you, counting down to liftoff. We'll be talking to 2 astronauts about why the new SpaceX mission is on course to make history today. morning again, everybody. Welcome back to Kay Burley at Breakfast. NASA and SpaceX are on course to make history today as they launch 2 astronauts into space for the first time in almost 10 years. The Demo 2 flight will be the first time a private company has attempted to send astronauts to space, with Elon Musk's firm SpaceX teaming up with NASA. Joining us is Dr. Helen Sharman, who was the first British astronaut to go into space and who visited the Mir space station in 1991. Also joined by former NASA astronaut and International Space Station Commander Leroy Chow. Hello to you both.
Morning.
How lovely to see you. To you, Helen Sharman, first. Ladies first. You're always a Trivial Pursuit question, the first Brit in space. How jealous are you of what's going to happen today?
Well, what a spacecraft today. I mean, it really, for so long we've been relying on the Soyuz spacecraft, which is the one that I flew onto the space station Mir with, and the one that's been going to the International Space Station for so long. It's a fabulous spacecraft, but it is very, very old technology. And this one, SpaceX, it looks absolutely, it's designer friendly. You have all the touch-sensitive panels for the astronauts. I mean, whether or not that would make an astronaut feel comfortable, perhaps Leroy could tell us a bit more about that. There's going to be a splashdown. Of course, Soyuz lands on dry land. So there are some differences, but on the other hand, they're sitting in a spacecraft. They're going to be launching into space. They'll feel that exhilaration, and hopefully they'll dock onto the space station. So many similarities too. But what's an exciting time?
I don't know how I feel about hopefully, Helen. Let's speak to Doug, and let's speak to Leroy, should we? And talk about Doug and Bob, your 2 former colleagues. Are you envious of them going into space?
Always envious of anyone traveling into space. Of course, I got my chance to fly 4 times, including 6.5 months aboard the International Space Station, so I'm hardly in a position to complain. But yes, this is a very exciting launch for many reasons. As you pointed out, 9 years since the United States has launched astronauts into orbit from U.S. soil, and of course, the first flight of a commercial spacecraft to take U.S. astronauts into orbit ever. And very modern, very new spacecraft, and you know, this is a very exciting day.
Are you envious, Helen?
I think all astronauts are envious of anybody going into space. Leroy's right. You know, it is just a fabulous experience in space. The things you can do up there that you can't do on Earth, and that camaraderie that you feel with the crew, you know, the views out of the window, we just love it. You know, I only had a few days. Leroy said, you know, he had 6 months, but still, we want to go back. Yeah, it is just a fantastic time, I think, for everybody.
Leroy, I think this latest mission, fingers crossed, is 3 months. As we were just saying there, Helen, underlining it, you were away for 6.5 months. What impact does it have on your body?
Well, the effects of spaceflight there are a number of biomedical effects, I should say, about traveling into space, even for a short period of time, for a few weeks, but especially for a long mission like 6 months, and none of them are good, right? And so there are a number of changes, but a lot of that can be counteracted by exercise. So we exercise for 2 hours a day aboard the International Space Station, and that helps to take care of a lot of things. Now, there are a few things it doesn't take care of, like radiation, for example. Of course, we're exposed to much higher levels of radiation in space. There are also other changes. You've probably heard or seen over the years articles about changes in astronauts' eyesight and eyes over the long period of time in space. And in some cases, we've seen astronauts come back with permanent eye damage. And so definitely things that we don't know about and we don't know how to fix yet. That underscores the importance of the ISS and why we have to develop what we call these medical countermeasures so that we can one day safely send astronauts to places like Mars.
Helen, Elon Musk has said this is the first step towards space tourism. What has to happen before we can take our summer holidays on a spaceship?
Well, I think there's still a long way to go, but this does mark a beginning of a different way of operating in space, doesn't it? So it means that one single company has the ability to not just launch, but have a safe spacecraft, and we see the astronauts there coming out. Hi, Bob and Doug. But we can launch space and can get astronauts there, dock onto a space station and bring them back safely. And if we can do that and release NASA's funds and resources for other things, Leroy's mentioned going to Mars, a good wave there from the astronauts, be just fabulous to think about the way those other resources could be spent. And now, of course, it means that SpaceX, the spacecraft Crew Dragon, as I understand it, can seat 7 people. NASA's likely to buy 4 seats when it sends astronauts into space, which leaves a further 3. So perhaps if you have the money at the moment, or if your organisation, your research association has the money, it can send a scientist into space. It will increase access to space for all sorts of people, not just tourists, but scientists alike. So a very, very interesting new stage in space flight.
Leroy, we just saw the astronauts previously going towards their rocket. What's it like as you take that walk out of NASA and towards the launch pad?
Well, of course, it's very exciting. You know, you're finally ready to go. You're suited up in your space suits and your pressure suits, and you're coming outside. There's a small crowd of local workers at the Kennedy Space Center cheering, and it's wonderful. And it was interesting to see that last video there. You know, of course, we're used to coming out either in our orange, what we call our pumpkin suits, you know, the pressure suits we used to wear in the space shuttle, and we get into that silver Astrovan, and watching Doug and Bob come out in their white SpaceX pressure suits and getting ready to get into a special Tesla to go to the launch pad is quite different, but I'm sure the feeling's about the same.
Talk to me, Helen, about young girls that are watching this morning who think, you know what, I want to be an astronaut. What do?
Well, the thing is, it's the same for anybody, and that's the wonderful thing. I love the word astronaut. You know, it doesn't mean male or female. Anybody can go into space, but still, I think the need to understand science and technology is really important. The way to work with people, so teamworking, being able to work flexibly and with a number of different people, sometimes remotely, of course. So we're dealing with teams that are on Earth when we're in space. So it's that's science, technology, engineering and maths, those subjects at school are the ones to really to continue the studies in, and just to enjoy life, you know, to enjoy a variety of hobbies, do different things, enjoy time that you spend with your friends and your family, and look out for all of those opportunities in the future, because they will be different. You know, we don't know how the future is going to be, and the world is just really opening up in so many different ways. So yes, it really could be a young person watching this launch today who does make those first few steps on the planet Mars.
Wow. Leroy, what do you think?
Oh, I absolutely agree. I have 2 young kids. I have twins, a boy and a girl, and my daughter's interested in science and engineering, so I certainly encourage that. My son's interested in medicine, I encourage that. So I agree. Young people need to find their passion, and you know, if one or both of them are interested in space, they haven't said they are so far. I want them to find their own way, but certainly young people out there who are interested in spaceflight and perhaps becoming an astronaut, you know, they should. One of the things I talk about is having the courage to follow your dreams, and I absolutely agree. I tell young people all the time that the secret to success, it's not really a secret, it's a recipe. Do the very best you can in school, and do the very best you can to maintain your health. And those 2 factors are the most important, and that'll allow you to reach your potential.
Helen, where will you be watching the launch later?
Oh, I shall be watching the launch from my home in West London. So yes, with all support garnered for the astronauts. And of course, we know it's not just the launch. That's the thing that excites us from Earth. But actually, it's the period after that when you're checking all the systems, and then in this case, 19 hours later, when the docking to the space station happens. And I think it's only after that docking when I certainly will breathe a little sort of sigh of relief for Bob and Doug and know that they're there nice and safe.
Fantastic. Good to talk to both of you. Thank you so much. So that launch a little bit later on, of course, covering it for you here on Sky News. So the Prime Minister is set to face a grilling from select committee chairs later on today as he faces the Liaison Committee, or Super Committee. He's going to be asking about his government's record on coronavirus, and he'll also face tough questions about the role of Dominic Cummings within the government. Earlier in the programme, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, Lisa Nandy, told me that she's concerned that the actions of Dominic Cummings could encourage the public to break the rules. And Plaid Cymru's Westminster leader, Liz Saville-Roberts, told us that she thought that the Prime Minister made an announcement on the reopening of schools in order to bury the Dominic Cummings story. Lots of questions to be answered and lots of pressure on the Prime Minister. Just to explain what the Liaison Committee is, you've probably heard that phrase before. Basically, there are lots of committees all around Westminster, and each of those chairwomen get together to form the Liaison Committee. Every now and seldom to the Prime Minister. It doesn't happen very often, but the Prime Minister has agreed to speak to the Liaison Committee today. Yvette Cooper, people like that, will be taking part in that. Others, like the Chairman of the Defence Committee, Tobias Ellwood, has been told that he can't ask a question. One wonders how he feels about that. So it will be 90 minutes long. It will be at 4 o'clock this afternoon, and they will be able to ask him basically whatever they want to. It will be remotely carried out, of course, because the MPs and Prime Minister can't get together at the moment, but it'd be very, very interesting to hear what he has to say, especially given what's happened over the last few days, and also the fact that we are looking to raise the lockdown rules from next week. Kids potentially going back to school. A couple of weeks after that, we are going to see shops opening as well. A couple of weeks after that, potentially pubs will be reopening, and restaurants and the like. Is that the format that we are still looking at? I'm sure that's one of the questions that the Prime Minister will be facing when he addresses the Liaison Committee later on. And of course, Dominic Cummings, the fact that he, I was going to say, relaxed the rules when he went to Durham and then also to Barnard Castle. What impact, if any, has that had on the rest of us? That from 4 o'clock this afternoon here on Sky News. Coming up next, though, it's Ian King Live. And today it is Emma Crosby standing by for us. Hello to you, Emma. What have you got for us?
Hello to you, Kay. Yes, a jam-packed programme coming up in just a few minutes' time. We're going to be speaking to the boss of EDF Energy, or certainly one of the bosses. They put in a planning application for a massive new nuclear power station just off the Suffolk coast. We'll also be talking to the boss of Geiger, I should say, the footwear company, as they get ready to reopen some of their stores come mid-June. It's going to cost them an awful lot of money. Stay tuned to find out more. Hi there, very good morning to you. Let's bring you the top stories live now from the Sky News City studio. Another new nuclear power station on the horizon. Plans to generate enough power for 6 million homes. Reopening retail. The shoe brand Kurt Geiger says it'll cost £75,000 per store to make it safe for customers. Chaos and rubber bullets as protests hit the financial district of Hong Kong as stock markets drop again on fears for the future. And the Scottish company working on a new at-home antibody test for COVID-19. Hi there, very good morning to you. It has been 25 years since the last new nuclear power station started producing electricity. That was Sizewell B on the Suffolk coast back in 1995. Now EDF Energy wants to add a Sizewell C. It has now submitted a planning application for a new reactor there. It'll be a replica of its Hinkley Point project, a controversial new nuclear power station that's based in Somerset. While EDF Energy has submitted what's known as a development consent order, it's up to the government to approve it. The consultation process started back in 2012. EDF Energy says it'll create 25,000 employment opportunities and 1,000 apprenticeships during construction, and also 900 permanent jobs once it is up and running. It'll then supply around 6 million homes. EDF Energy says that nuclear electricity will avoid 9 million tonnes of carbon dioxide compared to gas-powered generation. Well, we can speak live now to Julia Pike. Julia is the Nuclear Development Director at EDF and also Director at Sizewell C. That, of course, is the proposed new nuclear power station in Suffolk, and we can speak to her live. Thank you so much for talking to me here on the programme. I mean, renewable energy is increasingly supplying power demand in the UK, so why do we need another nuclear power station?
Well, you're quite right that renewables are doing a great job and increasing the amount of electricity they supply. But the wind doesn't always blow and the sun doesn't always shine. And we need something which is clean and resilient and helps us actually really expand our renewables so that we have a completely clean electricity system and we can stop burning fossil fuels.
It's not cheap, though, is it? Can you compete with renewables on price?
Well, we're doing everything we can to get costs down for consumers. And the really important thing to remember about cost to consumers is that you're paying for electricity 365 days of the year, and you want to pay to put your lights on when it's dark and it's not windy. And so really the cost to consumers is going to depend partly on the cost of renewables, but also on the cost of what's making electricity when it's not windy and it's not sunny. So we're really confident that having the right amount of nuclear as part of the mix supporting renewables is going to actually put consumer bills down.
OK, so you are talking about a new funding arrangement potentially for this power station where you will ask consumers to basically pay for the construction through upfront pricing. How will that work?
Well, the government is looking at different ways of funding nuclear. I think the National Audit Office recommended that after the Hinkley project, it looked at different ways. And what it's looking at is the same way that an awful lot of infrastructure is financed in the UK. So it's the way that electricity wires, for example, are financed and lots of things in the water industry. So it's been looking at that. It's called the regulated asset-based model. It consulted last July, but obviously the government's very busy dealing with the COVID crisis and the recovery. And when it's able to return to focus on normal business, then we expect them to reply. I mean, it's a really fantastic opportunity to help the recovery. You know, you've mentioned the 25,000 jobs and the 1,000 apprenticeships, and we work with more than 2,500 businesses right across the UK. So it can provide a real boost to a clean, resilient recovery for the UK.
I suppose that the concern, though, is that who's going to be liable for the costs if it overruns? Because you have had a problem, haven't you, building at Hinkley Point? And could that be consumers picking up the bill?
Well, Hinkley is the first of a kind in the UK. So it's the first time that we've built nuclear in the UK since Sizewell B. And what we're finding out as we build Hinkley is that there's brilliant learning from the first unit to the second unit. There are 2 reactors there. We're seeing productivity gains like 45% on some jobs between Unit 1 and Unit 2. And sometimes people talk about Hinkley being late, but it's not late at all. It's right on schedule. In fact, I'm really pleased to be able to tell you that today
it has
Hinkley's
overrun,
working
hasn't
on...
it? But it has overrun a lot, hasn't it, in price?
Yeah, there have been estimated cost increases. You're right, of a couple of billion. Yeah, that's true.
Okay, that is a lot of money.
It is a lot of money, but it's not actually really impacting what consumers pay for Hinkley. And for Sizewell, the cost of nuclear to consumers, I mean, as well as the point about actually what consumers pay for is like £600 to £700 a year for all year round electricity. But for consumers, if we do use a regulated asset-based model, construction is a really small part of what consumers pay. It's only really sort of £11, £12 a megawatt hour. And what we need to do is really focus on getting that down by learning from Hinkley, but also on getting the right financing model so that we can get costs for consumers as low as they can be.
Julia, just quickly, I want to ask you about the involvement of China in this project. There is increased concerns about China being involved in, frankly, any project here in the UK. Look at what's happened regarding 5G recently. What would you say to that?
Well, CGN are a financial partner for EDF in Hinkley. For Sizewell, that's a decision that's going to be made in the future as to not whether CGN wants to join in the construction phase of Sizewell. And the government's been looking really hard, as you're referring to, at how investment comes into nationally critical infrastructure like 5G and like nuclear. So any decision that's made will be made in very close consultation with the government.
OK, we'll leave it there. Julia Pike from EDF, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
The shoe retailer Kurt Geiger thinks it'll spend an extra £75,000 per store to make them safe for customers. It's one of the many businesses now reconfiguring shops, introducing strict new health and safety rules to allow their reopening, which could happen as soon as the 15th of June as the government eases some of those restrictions. While measures at Kurt Geiger include quarantining shoes for 24 hours after customers try them on, as well as all stores allowing one customer per 15 square metre of space. That's double the government guidelines. Antibacterial hand gels available throughout the stores to be used, and only card payments accepted, with contactless strongly encouraged. Well, joining us live now is Kurt Geiger's Chief Executive, Neil Clifford. Welcome to the programme. That's a lot of money, isn't it? £75,000 per shop. Can you afford it?
I think we've got no choice is the reality, but yes, we can afford it. And I think most importantly, we have to ensure our stores are 100% COVID secure for our staff and our customers. So yes, we can afford it.
And how are you going to approach the reopening? All stores are going to be open, or just the most profitable ones?
No, actually, we're opening 24 of the 57 stores. We've made a decision actually to do a variety of stores because, frankly, we don't know what is going to happen to traffic. Will it be large shopping centres? Will it be more localised stores like Portobello Road or Hampstead? Will it be high street stores? So we've taken a selection of all the variety of our locations. The challenge is when we do the calculation of the 15 square metres, some of our stores can only accept, actually, there's 2 stores that can accept 3 customers, very small stores in Leeds and in Heathrow. And our largest store in Covent Garden is 17 customers. So it's a very wide variety of the amount of customers we're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, the retail experience is not going to be the same, isn't it? I know that when you go into a Kurt Geiger store, you get a real experience. Can you provide that same experience with all these restrictions in place?
Yes, I think the good thing about retailers, and we're a nation of shopkeepers, is we're creative. We come up with new ideas. We're innovative. We can solve problems. We're masters of many things and not really experts in one thing. So yes, I think we can. We'll be selling these T-shirts exclusively on our stores to raise money for the NHS, which is launching the day we open on the 15th, and also we have bags that we're also selling. Excuse the bit selling here, but these bags are 100% of the proceeds goes to the NHS. We're planning to raise £1 million for the NHS this year. So we're endeavouring to be creative. I think the age of the boring store probably is dead. We have to innovate, survive and innovate is our new buzz term in the company.
And why is that? Do you think that the work that you're doing, which is great work with the NHS, by the way, will chime well with customers? Is that the reason why?
Well, I think we all feel appreciative of all the work for every frontline worker. Actually, we're giving 50% discount on our website, and then when our stores open in our stores, to all frontline workers via bluelightcard.com. We want to say thank you. All of our teams have had their salaries topped up above the furlough rate to 100% of salary. I've given up my salary, as most of our board. And we want to, I suppose we want to be on the right side of the end of this. We're a caring company, and we want to make that clear to our customers.
And yet they're not going to be all survivors on the high street, are there? You've already said that some companies, maybe not yourself, just aren't going to get through this period, are they?
No, I think that's probably right. I mean, we're focused solely on ourselves. We've had great support from our shareholders, Cinven and Lloyds Bank. So we know 100% now we're going to survive. Our sales will be down 40% this year. We'll lose over £120 million of turnover. 80% of our profits will decline. So the company has grown every single year since I joined, frankly, in '96, and we'll be back basically to 2008. So the challenge for all companies, not just retail, is we've been put back somewhere between 10 and 15 years by the COVID crisis. So the challenge for us all is I suppose, how do we recover from that?
It is a sobering, actually, when you say that, it's sobering, isn't it? Thank you so much for joining us. Kurt Geiger's Chief Executive there, Neil Clifford.
Thank you.
Thank you. Looking at other news for you now, mothers are more likely to be out of work than fathers since the start of the lockdown, according to research from the Institute for Fiscal Studies. The IFS found of parents who are in paid work before the lockdown, mothers are 1.5 times more likely than fathers to have even lost their job or quit since the lockdown began. Mothers spend around 2 hours a day less on paid work compared with fathers because they're more likely to be interrupted with household responsibilities. Research also highlights how differences in work patterns between mothers and fathers have grown since before the crisis. In 2014 to 15, mothers were paid work at 80% of the rate of fathers. That rate has now dropped to just 70%. Well, chaotic scenes in Hong Kong again overnight. Protests over Beijing's proposed new security laws. Many people could fear that could lead to another crackdown or change in status for the autonomous city that's a global financial hub. The protests are focused on the financial district, with reports of arrests and rubber bullets being fired. Fears of the impact on the economy are growing there. The main index, the Hang Seng, closed down again, as you can see, 0.3%. That's despite other Asian markets rising overnight. Let's have a look at the European markets for you. Closer to home, you can see they are keeping up a positive picture, positive momentum from yesterday's gains. All those major markets are up. And if we go to the London market, the FTSE 100, you can also see a gain of 1.3% in a fairly broad-based rally. It's proven to be another good day for travel stocks that jumped yesterday. The likes of Carnival Cruises and BA owner IAG leading the pack there, up 8.9% and 6% respectively. Financial stocks also continuing their winning run. And I'm going to be speaking to the chief executive of NatWest at 1:30 this morning. RBS renamed NatWest, trading higher by 6.5%, along with M&G, Lloyds and Barclays all stronger today. Quick check-in with the currency markets for you. The pound not doing a huge amount this morning, giving back a little of those gains against the dollar from yesterday. It's looking a little flat. Meanwhile, the oil price also not seeing a huge amount of movement earlier. A barrel of Brent crude currently trading at 35.62. That's down nearly 1.5%. Let's get some analysis for you now. Greg Purdon, Co-Chief Investment Officer at the private bank Arbuthnot Latham, joins us now. Good to have you on the programme. So this rally continues despite some very grim economic news. Do you think this rally has legs?
That's a good question. I mean, there's certainly a tug of war in between, on one side, an amazing amount of fiscal support and monetary support coming from the central banks around the world. And we need to take into consideration what we're seeing is the prospect for a large wall of unemployment, which is going to hit global economies. So ultimately, from an investment perspective, we're taking the view that this is most likely a bear market rally. In other words, equities have recovered somewhat, but ultimately, when we start to see some more trouble from an economic perspective, equities will start to potentially roll over to reflect the fact that this is going to be a problem that's going to last longer than expected.
And are you including, you know, the big gains you've seen in airline stocks and some of the big leisure stocks in that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just be a bit cautious about some of the what we'll call more fashionable investments of late. Very often, those business we take into consideration the fact that these business models have to be completely rethinked. Whereas there's probably some other opportunities in some of the other markets where it might be a touch safer for client capital.
Keen to get your opinions on what's happening, obviously, in Hong Kong. We've got an eye on the protests there, kind of more concerns about a lockdown from China, and that has impacted the Hang Seng. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, we recently took profits on our Chinese equity investments in our portfolios for clients. We're a bit cautious in terms of the Asian equity complex, and more specifically, you're right to point out the fact that Hong Kong equities have exhibited a little bit of weakness of late. I mean, Hong Kong is really going to be a hot spot for the rising tensions between the U.S. government and the Chinese government. So our opinion would be there's better places for capital in an environment like this.
Let's go overseas, continue our trip overseas and have a look at the US market. It's actually an interesting day because the New York Stock Exchange reopened its trading floor after being shut for 2 months. Does that have any impact? Because most of it's electronic these days, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on to point that out. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I visited the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. It was an exciting place. And today it's not very exciting. It's like you said, everything's electronic.
Okay, so what's caught your eye in the States?
I mean, in terms of the investment opportunities, I think that one of the areas that we're focusing on is actually focusing on investing in our client capital into investments where there's support from central banks. And what I mean by that is investors like the Federal Reserve is the biggest investor in the world. And whatever they're buying, chances are there's essentially a floor on those prices. So a lot of our investments are currently being allocated to the global investment grade corporate bonds, so the safer part of the credit spectrum, because we believe that probably we'll see a little bit more stress in the future, and that will give us an opportunity to rotate back into some more higher risk investments at a later date.
Of course, investors have been very concerned about the pandemic, naturally, but we're getting more talk about trade wars or fears regarding trade wars coming back into the mix, aren't we? Particularly when it comes to the United States and China. Do you have concerns around that area?
Yeah, that's spot on to point that out. I mean, the deeper issue also is how is the Donald Trump re-election campaign going to be managed? Clearly, before the corona crisis, it looked like Donald Trump was really going to, ace this one, so to speak. But now that the crisis has taken place, his ability to actually, sway the public and get into office as a shoo-in, I think, is being questioned. And most likely, Donald Trump will try to create a scenario where he's trying to get more support for the re-election campaign. And that might mean that he's going to use the conflict and the rising tensions with China to his advantage. So I don't see any calm waters across the Pacific anytime soon.
OK, Greg, thank you so much. We'll leave it there. Greg Purdon, Co-Chief Investment Officer at the private bank Arbuthnot Latham. Here's a question for you. Have you had it or not? That's what most of us who've had coronavirus symptoms will want to know. Well, the Scottish company Omega Diagnostics Group is joining forces with a consortium south of the border to develop an antibody test. They say they could make around 50 million tests a year, which could be used at home to detect those who have been previously infected. Let's speak live now to the Chief Executive of Amiga Diagnostics, Colin King. Welcome to the show, Colin. So you're developing this test. What are your hopes for it?
Good morning. In terms of maybe just take a step back in terms of the hopes for the test. It's being very much designed to be used directly by members of the public. We're developing the test. It will be it's a lateral flow test, so it's very similar to a pregnancy test. Rather than using urine sample, it's a finger pick of blood that can be run at the home, as opposed to the other antibody tests that have been recently used that require a phlebotomist to take a sample and then you send your it's then sent to the lab to be run. So this is very much being designed as a home test. We're also developing an app to run alongside that. It will be able to run with or without the app. So the idea is obviously that we can screen large amounts of people with this test to determine whether or not you have been exposed to the virus or not.
The problem is, I suppose, Colin, it's becoming a crowded market, isn't it? What is more special about your test than the ones that are already out there?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of I think there's space for everybody, and in terms of those lab-based tests, they are very much, as I alluded to, you've got to get a phlebotomist to take a blood sample. It's a blood draw that is then sent to the lab to be run. So obviously the time to get results is far longer. Whilst the test that we're developing, you'll get your result. You'll be able to run it in your house. It's a simple test that you take a sample, finger prick of blood, and within 15 minutes or so, you'll have the results of the test. So I think it's very much, a mixed strategy that the government will use. Where you can see in terms of frontline workers, it's very appropriate for that lab test to be run. But if you think about people in the home or care homes, for example, that's less, it's more difficult to be able to run those lab tests, and that's where our test would certainly would be more beneficial to be used.
And costs, what are we looking at?
The cost is still to be firmed up, but in terms of lateral flow tests are very competitively priced, and it will be sub £10 per test that the product will be sold to the government for, which is significantly cheaper than the current tests that are on the market.
We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Colin King, the Chief Executive of Amiga Diagnostics. Well, that is pretty much it from us for now. We'll be back at 1:30 this afternoon. We'll be speaking to the new CEO of NatWest, Alison Rose. For now, though, let's cross back now to Adam Bolton.
Emma Crosby, thank you very much indeed. Well, we're starting a little earlier today because the Cabinet Minister doing the media round is Robert Jenrick. He's been a little bit delayed, but he is now able to join us. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Jenrick. I want to ask you, first of all, briefly, I hope, about the whole Dominic Cummings affair. As we know, a lot of elected Conservative MPs are listening to their constituents and saying that they're not satisfied with the explanations given by Dominic Cummings and the Prime Minister. They do believe he broke the rules when many other people in similar difficult circumstances didn't, and they think he should go. Why are they wrong?
Well, good morning, Adam. Dominic Cummings has given his detailed explanation to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister asked him to say that publicly on Monday, to answer questions from the media, which he did for over an hour, answering every question.
Look, sorry, could you answer my question, please? I'm asking you, I'm not asking about what he said. We know what he said. We carried it live here on Sky News. The point is, a lot of your colleagues, elected MPs, unlike Mr. Cummings, don't think his answers are satisfactory. And I'm saying, why are they wrong?
The Prime Minister, and I agree with him, believe that he's acted reasonably and within the law. He obeyed the guidelines. I appreciate that many people across the country, including many of my colleagues in Parliament, believe that he made the wrong decisions, but he did behave within the guidelines. And so I believe, and I think the Prime Minister does as well, that we should now move forwards.
OK, well, a lot of people were fairly questioning about questioning about your own behaviour. That also got the thumbs up from the Prime Minister. So it does look a little bit as if there's one law for you and a different law for everyone else, and indeed a law which has been enforced on the rest of us.
No, it's not the case. Nobody is exceptional here. Everybody has to obey the same rules. And with respect to Dominic Cummings, he did obey the guidelines. The guidelines say that if you have children, you should try to follow the rules to the very best of your ability, but they do allow you to use a degree of discretion.
Right, okay, so you're still in your job. We know Professor Ferguson is not in his job. We know also that Dr. Calderwood is not in her job, but you're in your job. Dominic Cummings is in his job. I do want to ask you about something in the Times today. It says, it seems extraordinary to me, that you've admitted that you showed apparent bias in unlawfully intervening to approve a planning decision in favour of Richard Desmond's company in London when the council and the inspector had ruled against it. So you admit you showed apparent bias towards a Tory donor.
Well, it's not appropriate for me to get into individual planning applications. Obviously, as Housing Secretary,
well, it's a matter of record. You have admitted, have you admitted apparent bias in this case, and what does that mean?
Well, I can assure you that we took this decision as we do all decisions on the merits. We absolutely refute any suggestion of bias, but we did.
Well, hang on, wait a minute. Either you've admitted apparent bias, as reported in the Times today, or you haven't. Have you admitted apparent bias?
No, we said that there is no bias, but that because issues were raised, for absolute fairness, we would quash the decision and enable it to be retaken if that's what the applicant wants, and that will be retaken, as is the usual way, by a different minister. So that was done for complete fairness, and the decision, if the applicant wishes to do so, can be retaken at a later stage.
Well, the applicant, of course, is the person who benefits from this, so I don't think that's particularly meaningful. But this is being quoted. I just want to get this on the record. Have you admitted officially, this is what the Times is saying, that you showed, quotes, apparent bias in unlawfully intervening to approve this planning application?
Well, the way that the court process works is that if you want to retake the decision, then you have it quashed in the court. That's what we've done, and that enables it to be retaken if the applicant wishes that to be the case. We obviously don't believe that we acted inappropriately or that we showed actual bias.
Hang on. Look, I'm just trying to establish the facts here. The Times is reporting, I've just read it out to you, that you have accepted that you showed apparent bias in unlawfully intervening to approve this application by Richard Desmond's company, a man who supports the Conservatives and has donated to the Conservatives. I'm just asking you, factually, in the legal process, have you admitted that you showed apparent bias?
The legal process sets out that the way the decision was taken could give rise to the appearance of bias, but obviously we reject that there was any actual bias, and that's why, for complete fairness, the department decided that the decision could be retaken by a different minister, and that may well happen if the applicant wishes to do so in the future.
Because, of course, the reason why the inspector and the council were against it was because there wasn't enough social housing, enough housing for poor people.
Well, I hope you'll respect this. It's not appropriate for me to get into the details of individual planning applications.
Well, you're the bloke who takes the decision. You've taken a decision in this case, so I think it is appropriate.
Well, if I can just explain, it is true that the government is keen to get more homes built, and there's a consistent record by this government and indeed by me as Secretary of State that we've tried to ensure that homes get built, particularly in London, where development has been too slow in recent years. So we have
but you see, the local council said there weren't enough affordable homes, social houses for the people who need them. There may have been apartments for rich people who live abroad, and that may help Mr. Desmond's company. But the issue is This is a typical example of a scheme in London where the authorities said there weren't enough social houses and you have intervened to approve it. That's the circumstance, isn't it?
Well, that isn't quite right. It's obviously, it is more complicated than that, but it is correct that we judged that the benefit of more homes outweighed some of the other concerns with the project.
Yeah, this is more expensive homes, though. Fewer cheaper homes and more expensive homes
across the country. Well, we want to get more homes of all kinds built, obviously in the right places, and you judge each application on its own merits, but we want to get more homes built of all kinds. We're doing that in a number of different ways, supporting developments, but also investing in affordable housing as well. And we're bringing forward the largest ever affordable homes programme, for example, which was announced at the budget, that will enable us to build thousands more homes which are available to people on low incomes. We're also bringing forward our signature home ownership policy, First Homes, that will give a 30% discount to first-time buyers and to key workers like nurses and care workers to get their first step on the housing ladder.
Well, I want to move on and talk about the homeless, but just one final question on this issue. With hindsight, do you accept that you were wrong to intervene and you shouldn't have approved this development?
Well, we judged it on the merits, and that was done without any actual bias. But clearly the way that the process was run gave rise to some concerns, and so that's why we've chosen to quash the decision by agreement with the other parties and to have it redetermined. I think that's the fairest way to proceed now.
Now, you've been widely praised for the action the government's taken to deal with the homelessness during this pandemic. Most of them, I don't know how many, but how many people have been taken into accommodation off the streets?
Well, we've helped about 15,000 people off the streets and into temporary but safer accommodation like hotels and B&Bs to protect them from the pandemic, and that's probably saved hundreds of people's lives. But now there's a big task ahead of us as to how we can ensure that as few of those people as possible end up back on the streets when the lockdown measures are eased. And so the first step, and I think it is a significant one that we're bringing forward this week, is saying that we're going to be buying or building 6,000 new homes which are going to be made available to those people who were previously sleeping rough. They're going to be brought forward over the next 2 years, and with each of those homes will also be wraparound care, because rough sleeping is as much a crisis of mental health and addiction as it is one of housing. And so the individuals that move into these homes will get support as well on the health side so they can begin to rebuild their lives.
Does that mean then that the 15,000 who are being accommodated now will be kept in that accommodation till those homes are ready, i.e. for the next 2 years?
Not necessarily. A lot of that accommodation is temporary. It's hotels who may well wish to return to their usual business when they're able to do so in the weeks and months to come. And so we'll need to use a range of different options to look after people appropriately until they can be moved into the kind of good quality move-on accommodation that we want to bring forward. And we have a task force led by Dame Louise Casey, who's a recognised national expert in this field, to try to help us through that process. We're also working very closely with local councils, and together we're going to be bringing forward accommodation. But it's obviously our objective that nobody who is in that temporary accommodation today drifts back onto the streets, or at the very least we've offered them a better alternative if they want to take it up.
So we won't see 15,000 people effectively being tipped out back onto the streets?
No, I strongly hope that's not the case. This is challenging, I accept that, and I can't promise you that every person will end up in the kind of accommodation that we want and will be able to rebuild their lives. But our objective is to offer each of those people better accommodation, and that can then in time lead to the move-on accommodation that we're going to be bringing forward as a result of this £400 million investment. And this will be the largest investment in move-on accommodation for rough sleepers we've ever had as a country, the largest since the Rough Sleeping Initiative was created by a predecessor of mine, Sir George Young, in the early 1990s. So it is a big step forward, but I don't underestimate the scale of the challenge ahead, because we're dealing with, understandably, complex individuals who will need a lot of support to enable them to move forward.
I mean, I understand that, but do you not think that this crisis, the way it's been handled, the success of it, shows what John Bird and other people have been saying for many years, that a kind of managed, almost compulsory hostel programme for the homeless people is actually the way to eliminate the problem?
Well, I think it's certainly true that if you can get people into accommodation, housing first, as we call it, that is the best way then to begin to build up people and to put the care around them. And that's the approach that we're going to be taking forward now. This is the first time in my lifetime
in this whole reconstruction process, which is going to come after the lockdown, whether you as a minister are saying to the Treasury, look, why don't we make some of these hotels permanent and deal with the problem that way? Because relative to the cost of everything else, furlough and all the rest, that would be quite low, wouldn't it?
Well, we've secured £430 million to bring forward these 6,000 homes and to ensure that they've got the right support around them. We've also got £112 million a year rough sleeping initiative. So there are quite large sums of money being invested. If we need to secure more funding, then obviously I'll be fighting for that with the Treasury, because this matters to us, and it would be a huge missed opportunity as a country if we allow people to drift back onto the streets unnecessarily. It might be that we do purchase some of the hotels that people have been staying in, but we've got to make sure that we find safe, good quality accommodation that's right for the individuals, and that's exactly what we're going to set out to do now in the weeks ahead.
Mr. Jenrick, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Well, we can go now to Sky's political correspondent Joe Pike, who is with me. And Joe, hearing this same answer from ministers that they gave news conferences, they answered the questions, therefore that should be the end of the matter. But that doesn't appear to be the view of quite a lot of Conservative MPs.
No, not at all, Adam. I think what Robert Jenrick and his colleagues are trying to do is almost starve this story of oxygen. But it does seem at the same time that some backbenchers are putting more fuel onto the fire. In the last hour, Jonathan Gullis, who is one of the 2019 intake Tory MPs, he's been asking questions at the Education Select Committee meeting of the Schools Minister, Nick Gibb, and asking how teachers and parents can regain confidence in the government. He said in the last hour, Adam, the message has been undermined. Even if the law hasn't been broken, the spirit of the law has. It's hard to underestimate the frustration and anger that a lot of Conservative backbenchers are feeling, partly because they know their email inboxes are absolutely packed with constituents who are angry, and also many of them have had to respond to constituents who have not met family members who have been desperately ill, not been able to attend funerals. Opposition parties want more details, though. This is what the Shadow Foreign Secretary Lisa Nandy said earlier today.
I think there is a really big moment coming, because we're easing out of lockdown. That requires a series of political judgments as well as scientific judgments, and people need to understand the basis of the advice that they're being given, and they need to trust it. My big worry about what's happened over the weekend is that I think increasingly people will feel that they can't trust the guidance that the government is putting out.
I think the view, though, Adam, from Number 10 is that we are past the peak of this Cummings crisis. They're pretty happy that no really big, prominent names on the backbenches are speaking out. And the one minister who did resign isn't particularly well known, although I do think Douglas Ross is pretty well respected. They also don't think there is actually a coordinated plot. This is just individual MPs who are frustrated. Now, that could have been very different if MPs weren't in recess and they were all together in the Commons bars and cafeterias, perhaps plotting. I think they also are hoping, the government, that attention now shifts to test, track and trace. That is something we expect Matt Hancock to discuss at the Downing Street press conference he's chairing tonight. It'll be a little bit later than normal, around 5:30, because, of course, Boris Johnson is attending the liaison committee at 4 p.m. for an hour and a half, taking questions primarily on the government's response to COVID-19, but also, surely there will be questions about Dominic Cummings and his actions.
Joe, thank you very much indeed. And we will bring you Boris Johnson's appearance before the Commons Liaison Committee this afternoon. That is due to be live here on Sky News around about 4 o'clock this afternoon. In Hong Kong, police have fired pepper pellets at pro-democracy activists as Hong Kong MPs debate a new bill which would criminalise insulting China's national anthem. New national security laws proposed by Beijing have revived anti-government protests in the city-state. Well, we can get the latest from our Asia correspondent, Tom Cheshire. Tom, what's going on in terms of the protests and in the Assembly?
Well, the protests today weren't allowed to go ahead, and police were nonetheless extremely ready. There are thousands of police all over the city attempting to shut down any protest and to stop protesters encircling LegCo, the Legislative Council, which is Hong Kong's parliament, as this was being debated. They fired pepper bullets, which are a bit like pepper spray, but you fire it from a gun instead. It stings the eyes. Not quite the blanket effect of tear gas, but still very effective. And at least 180 arrests have been made. This was really the police out in force ahead of this national anthem bill being debated. Now, this bill isn't the big law that's got everyone really riled up. This law would, as you say, outlaw insulting the Chinese national anthem. Anyone who does that would face financial penalties or up to 3 years in jail. People had been worried about this before, but as you say, there's another law which has got people even more worked up in Hong Kong, the national security legislation, which was announced here in Beijing last week at the National People's Congress. That's China's rubber stamp parliament. And this is a pretty sweeping national security law which would ban all sorts of things: secession, subversion, foreign interference, terrorism, and any act that might endanger national security. Now, here on the Chinese mainland, those same sort of national security laws exist, and they're routinely used to silence critics of the Chinese Communist Party. And the fear for Hong Kongers is that the same will happen in Hong Kong, which has a different system. There's one country, two system is the moniker often used. Hong Kong, according to its basic law, its mini constitution, has the freedom of speech, freedom of protest, freedom of the press, and Hong Kongers worry those would be all under threat because of this national security law. Now, yesterday, Carrie Lam, who's Hong Kong's chief executive, she was trying to reassure people about these new national security laws. She's already pledged her support, and she was holding a press conference yesterday, and she said, "We are a very free society, so for the time being, people have the freedom to say whatever they want to say." And I think saying that for the time being people have the freedom to say what they want to say isn't going to reassure Hong Kongers. But she said, we have nothing to worry about. People should wait to see the detail of this national security legislation. Now, we will get that detail tomorrow here in Beijing when the National People's Congress votes on this national security legislation. Given how the Chinese system works, I can confidently predict that is going to pass. And then the next question would become when and how this is implemented in Hong Kong. I think what we saw today, both in terms of the police being ready, protesters wanting to take to the streets, we are at the start of another long summer of protest in Hong Kong.
Thank you very much indeed, Tom Cheshire there. Well, there are hopes the British woman imprisoned in Iran may be granted clemency today. Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe is furloughed from an Iranian jail where she has been detained since 2016. She was arrested at an airport in Tehran in April of 2016, and she was due to fly back to the UK after a holiday visiting her parents, along with her daughter Gabriella. That September, she was jailed for 5 years following a conviction on unspecified national security offences. And just over a year later, the then Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson told a parliamentary committee Nazanin was working as a journalism teacher in Tehran. The comments risked complicating her case and were later withdrawn. In August 2018, Nazanin was temporarily released, only to be returned to jail 3 days later. Then, last October, her daughter Gabriella was returned to the United Kingdom after more than 3 years living in Tehran with her grandparents to start school. In March, there were concerns Nazanin had contracted COVID-19 in jail. She was released on the 17th of March, pending a decision on clemency. And this month, Iran's supreme leader announced that he is due to pardon some 3,000 prisoners as part of the Muslim Eid celebrations. And earlier this morning, Nazanin's husband, Richard, told Kay Burley at breakfast that he's hopeful she'll be one of them.
It feels like we're quite close. It feels like things could still go wrong. We've had a number of times where we've been down to the prosecutor's office and told to come back in a week's time, so that might be happening again. But yeah, I think in terms of this, Nazanin has clearly been held for a long time. There's clearly been a battle happening between different parts of the Iranian regime about what to do with her. It feels like more parts of the Iranian regime.
Well, let's speak to our correspondent, Lisa Holland. And Lisa, as we know, Richard Ratcliffe has been very, very measured and cautious throughout his wife's ordeal. So the fact that he's hopeful must be a very good sign.
Yes, I think he's learnt to kind of caution himself in the past, Adam, that there have been many occasions when Richard Ratcliffe felt that this was the moment that Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe would be freed from prison in Iran, and that moment passed without success. So there was a particular Christmas a couple of years ago now, and I remember he really felt that was the time that she was going to be freed from jail. But today, as you heard there in that interview with Kay Burley this morning, he said that he was hopeful. I was talking to him yesterday when he said he thought that it was possible but not probable. I think the facts are that lots of things are kind of falling in her direction at the moment, which could add up to this being the right time when things weren't quite right for her to be freed in the past, in terms of the fact that she is being held as a political prisoner. We know that the Supreme Leader has said that some 3,000 people are going to be freed as part of Eid, as an act of clemency, and therefore Richard Ratcliffe is hopeful that his wife, who having served a long sentence, and certainly more than half of the sentence, could be on that list. Now, the way things are going to work is that the lawyers are going down to the prosecutor's office. They have to go in person to simply ask the question, is Nazanin's name on that list of the 3,000 people who are going to be given clemency? And Richard Ratcliffe will be spending some anxious minutes this morning waiting for that phone to ring to work out whether or not her name is on that list. At the moment, we know that she's been given what's called furlough, which is essentially home leave. So she's with her parents at their home in the Iranian capital, Tehran. She has a tag to make sure that she can't leave that house. And she still has conditions as to where and when, what she can do exactly at the moment. But I think that, yes, there is some optimism. Today could be the day. But as I say, that's tempered by the fact that they have been here before.
OK, thank you very much indeed, Lisa. President Donald Trump has embarked on a new Twitter row, and this time it's with the social media giant Twitter itself. This comes after Twitter fact-checked some of the president's tweets. Ashna Hurinag has more. I don't know if Donald Trump's woken up yet this morning and started tweeting again. What's this all about?
Well, Adam, the US president is no stranger, is he, to causing controversy on the social media site, but this is the first time the platform has called him out for it. This all revolves around two tweets in particular. The first one in which the president says that the mail-in ballots are substantially fraudulent. Another in which he says that the 2020 presidential election will be rigged because of it. This is something that has been particularly fascinating because of that blue hyperlink that Twitter have put in there. If people click on that, it says that people can get the facts there. And when they do click on that link, it opens up a page leading them to a number of corroborated media outlet articles, which essentially say that these claims are false and that they are not, they can't be stood up and they're not true. This is something that the president has kicked back at pretty strongly. He said that Twitter is interfering in the 2020 election and that they are stifling free speech. Now, the president himself is no stranger for causing controversy on sites like Twitter, but it is the first time that a social media site has said that he is misleading their audience. They will be conscious, though, Twitter as a whole, that the some 80 million followers that the president has, often they do go to his page for outrageous comments such as this. So Twitter don't want to annoy all of those followers. They don't want to annoy him either, but they have a delicate balancing act. They need to make sure that people, users like the president, are able to get across their opinion and exercise their right to free speech. But at the same time, they need to be aware and will be conscious that readers aren't given misinformation.
Thank you very much indeed. You're watching Sky News. Coming up next, unrest in Minnesota as 4 police officers are fired following the death of a black man in custody.
Coronavirus has changed everything. So what will our new world be like once the pandemic is over? Well, from Monday, I'll be joined by some of the biggest names from the worlds of culture, economics, politics, science and technology to find out how all our lives are going to change. And you can join in too. To be part of our virtual audience, email After the Pandemic at sky.uk or go to skynews.com. That's After the Pandemic, our new world, live on Sky News at 8 p.m. from Monday.
Shed light on how we can make our families better and stronger. It is said the family can do without the society, but the society can't. Listen to the Family Enrichment Programme this and every Saturday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Starr Radio UK, your favourite Afro-Caribbean radio station in London.
Download our app in iTunes and the Google Play Store.
Hi everyone, I'm Bibi Clement, the author of How to Go From Employee to Entrepreneur. Just want to quickly tell you about a new and exciting radio show that I'm going to be hosting called Bibi Means Business. And I'll be discussing the importance of developing different income streams in today's climate, and focusing on the small business as one such viable income stream. I'll be sharing valuable tips on how to set up a small business successfully and diversify into other areas. I'll also show you how to discover your gifts and your talents and how you can monetize them, all with the aim of helping your dream of becoming financially free become a reality. So join me, Bibi Clement, every Tuesday on Starr Radio at 1:30 p.m. Remember, don't let life dictate to you. Rather, put your signature on life.
Hi guys, this is your friend from Sendwave. Sendwave is a money transfer app that you can download onto your smartphone and send money to Ghana and Nigeria. Sendwave is absolutely commission-free. No matter how many times you send money or whatever the amount may be, you will never have to pay any commission ever. Your money is transferred in 30 seconds, and right now, Sendwave is offering the best exchange rates in the market. Don't believe me? Look for yourself. Join me on the morning show on Starr Radio every Tuesday at 12:45 p.m. In the meantime, download the Sendwave app from the App Store or Google Play Store. Remember to use the promo code STAR to get £5 free credit. That's STARR. Bye for now.
Listen to Regina Abban and Lady Caroline every Monday from 5 to 6:30 p.m. on Point at Starr Radio UK, where we educate the youth and young adults on life issues.
Check me out. He tells me my energy is making him tired.
Yes!
How do you get the energy to do
I've been told that I have a lot of energy, but my goodness, I think today I have met my match, people. I have met my match, Miss Suzanne. Wow, amazing.
One of the things that's the start of the whole of darkness. So what did that? Myself and the world will adjust. And 2019,
Forget the proverbial boardroom. Join me, Simone Frazier, on The CEO, the program that gives you the driving seat over your life. Every Tuesday, 8 p.m. only on Star Radio.
Turn it on. Turn it up.
Hi there, this is CJ Buckman, your life coach. And whenever I'm in London, I listen to Star Radio UK right here. But guess what? You can listen to wherever you are.
Broadcasting worldwide, online 24/7.
all around the world. In your car,
At work.
at home,
On your
This is
smartphone.
Star Radio UK.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I know your heart is aching. Smile even though it's breaking. When there are clouds in the sky, you get by. If you smile through your fear and sorrow, smile and maybe tomorrow you find that life is still worthwhile. If you just smile. Hey, this is Archie, and you're listening to Starr Radio UK. Okay, hello, good morning, and welcome to Starr Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. Today is the 27th day of May, the year 2020. Time now 10:29. The station Starr Radio UK, the program The Morning Show. Of course, I am Archie. But let me
me say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good dawn to you, wherever you might be on planet Earth. Especially those of you on other planets as well. We say welcome and hello to you. It is a Wednesday edition of the morning show. And therefore, as you know, the session we brought to a close at 12 o'clock. We're taking you around for some government information that is going on. But wherever you are, once again, I say a massive, massive welcome.
Welcome.
But I want you to do me a massive favor, you know. Share the page with your friends and loved ones if you're on Facebook, those of you on Twitter, Periscope, YouTube, and all the others. Share the links with them wherever they might be. Good morning to my colleague and representative, Mr. Frank David, to Mr. Olayomi, wherever you are, gentlemen, good morning. To the one and only Pastor Emmanuel Chini. Pastor Chini, thank you very much for joining us once again. Good morning. Felix, all the way in Aberdeen, morning to you. Dr. Morton, Mr. David Cruce, Mr. Theophilus Teiko, Ross Kwame, Chaletete. Are you back to work or still working from home? Good morning to you. Mr. Malik Dramani Mahama, Mr. Kofi Ali, Ambassador Light for ECOWAS. Salute. Boom. Okay. So for the sake of those who listen, it's their first time of listening to us, tuning in to listen to Starr Radio UK Morning Show. This is how the program is like. I'll bring you the quote for the day, then the weather forecast will be following suit, and the travel update, some lovely music, and then we look at some of the stories making the rounds here in the UK. We then go on from there. At 11 o'clock, we have Mr. Olaimi Kwaike coming in with updates from Nigeria. We go on from there, and then exactly at 11:30, the lines will be open for you to add your voice to the discussions. Tick tock, exactly at 12 o'clock, we bring the program to close. Take it for the PMQ. Wherever you are, welcome to the program. Okay. Let me say a massive happy birthday to my brother, my young brother and his wife. Interestingly, they all celebrate their birthdays on the same day. Herbert and Anne. And then they have on wherever you are. Happy birthday to you. I hope you are having a very good day. It's sunny in Ghana, so enjoy it. I'll try to see whether I'll organize the choir to come and give you some nice birthday tune. So what does the quote for the day say? The quote for the day says, preparation is vital to unlocking tremendous wealth in opportunities. Preparation is vital to unlocking the tremendous wealth in opportunities. Take that opportunity to say good morning to Mrs. Evelyn Tabiri and Mr. Dan Tabiri, CEO of GIL Accountancy Services, our money man. Starr Radio UK. Now let's move on to the weather front. Let me tell you what is happening on the weather front, and then we'll move on to the travel updates as well. It is Starr Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. On the weather front
front this morning. For landing in the southeast of England, it has high pressure. The high pressure will dominate the weather, giving a fine and dry day. However, light northeasterly winds look to push some areas of cloud during the day, remaining warm. And then tonight is going to be remaining dry with lengthy clear spells throughout the night, along with light winds through the early hours. A few areas of cloud could build in. But when it comes to the temperatures, top temperature is going to be 25 degrees, the low is going to be 12 degrees. Pollen level is going to be high, UV level is going to be moderate, pollution moderate. Sunset is going to be at 21:03 and sunrise for tomorrow morning, 04:53 hours. That brings us to the end of the weather forecast for you. $10:35 the time. Let me take you straight to the travel update. Stay tuned. Don't touch the dial. Check it out. Keep your eyes on the road. Could it be that you will never keep your eyes on the road. Check it out. Check it out. This is Big shout out to all the people in Africa. Yeah, so keep your eyes on the roads. Keep your eyes on the roads. I'll keep you navigated. I promise I'm on the Starr Radio UK travel update that comes away every weekday from 10:30. 10:35 the time. Now, on your travel this morning, those of you on the underground, apart from the Waterloo and City line that is closed, all the others are having a special service there. When it comes to DLR London Overground, the TFL Rail and the London Tram in good service throughout. But continue to keep your eyes on the roads. I will keep you navigated. Now let's move on quickly to the river bars. Let me tell you what is happening on that front. On the river bars this morning, Woolwich Ferry special service, RB6 good service, all the rest suspended. But continue to keep your eyes on the roads. Now moving on to the National Rail this morning as well. On the National Rail, Great Western Railway has got special service, South Western Railway special service there as well. Keep your eyes on the roads. Keep your eyes on the roads. The Starr Radio UK travel update that comes your way every weekday from 10:30. Now, on the major roads in London, what's happening there? A10 has got closures, A21 closures, A3 closures, A4 closures, A40 closures, Central London Red Routes closures, South Circular A205 closures there as well. That aside, all the other routes, good service. Or no exceptional delays. So on that note, let me say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good dawn to you. Enjoy your commute for today, but you know what? Continue to keep those eyes on the roads.
Hello, lovely listeners. Tune in to the renewed show with Charlotte. Make it a date to listen to me this and every Thursday at 5 p.m. on Starr Radio UK. Tune in to an hour of power, an hour of encouragement, an hour to inspire you to stay positive and strong in this season. See you there and listen.
Getting onto the property ladder has never been easy until now. Join us this and every Thursday from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. live on the Property Hour Show on Starr Radio UK, where we talk to mortgage brokers, property developers, estate agents, landlord, tenant, property consultants on how to invest or get into the property business and make money. You can't afford to miss this. The Property Hour Show is your best source into the property industry.
On the Family Enrichment Programme on Starr Radio UK. This and every Saturday from 6 to 8 p.m.
Some people are wicked because don't make it your business going about revealing
people's secrets. Don't be a busybody.
And some people. Today's typical family is under pressure from various directions. Divorce is on the increase. More and more of the Afro-Caribbean youth are taking to crime, etc. The Family Enrichment Programme brings together a team of qualified experts to discuss and shed light on how we can make our families better and stronger. It is said the family can do without the society, but the society can't. Listen to the Family Enrichment Programme This and every Saturday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Star Radio UK, your favorite Afro-Caribbean radio station in London.
Download our app in iTunes and the Google Play Store.
Hi everyone, I'm Bibi Clement, the author of How to Go from Employee to Entrepreneur. Just want to quickly tell you about a new and exciting radio show that I'm going to be hosting called Bibi Means Business. And I'll be discussing the importance of developing different income streams in today's climate and focusing on the small business as one such viable income stream. I'll be sharing valuable tips on how to set up a small business successfully and diversify into other areas. I'll also show you how to discover your gifts and your talents and how you can monetize them, all with the aim of helping your dream of becoming financially free become a reality. So join me, Bibi Clement, every Tuesday on Star Radio at 1:30 p.m. Remember, don't let life dictate to you. Rather, put your signature on life.
This is Star Radio UK.
Welcome back to the program. It is the Starr Radio UK Morning Show. I'm Archie. Now, let's have a quick look at some of the headlines before I bring you my first carefully selected choice of song. And interestingly, the Health Secretary yesterday during the press briefing on the COVID updates did promise that, well, with what had happened with Dominic Cummings, they'll be having a look at people or parents who were given tickets or penalties for maybe driving their kids to various points. However, the government has done a U-turn there, and people are of the view that, well, why is government doing a U-turn? What is good for the geese is good for the ganders, and therefore, or what is good for the goose is good for the ganders. So they think that that is an unfair game. Now, what do you think about all that? Now, yesterday we had a lengthy debate or discussion on the Dominic Cummings issue. People believe that you have to walk the talk, not talk the talk, and then let others walk it, and then you do otherwise. And therefore, people are of the view that the government or the Prime Minister and his team are not doing the right thing. Some are still calling for his head to be on the line. However, others are thinking that, well, let him be. But if he went that distance, people captured him on their, whether their phones or their cameras, and have used that, and he's giving all that explanation. And people also had to go to various points, point A to B, with their families, or maybe their children, to maybe their partners, or whatever the case or the situation might be. Why shouldn't their penalties be looked at? Now, that is one of the stories making the rounds there. We'll be having a look at that. Schools and businesses could see local lockdowns. Well, those are some of the further details that came through. Now, Twitter tags Trump post with fact-checking warning. It is the first time the social media giant has said one of Donald Trump's tweets could be misleading. Now, somebody who uses that to fire at people, now that same platform is now checking up on him, and his head is gone boom. So, that and a lot more we'll be having a look at. Death of U.S. black man in custody sparks clashes in Minnesota. Let me say good morning to Kamfana Havit and the family in Minnesota. Hope you are all doing well and keeping calm there. This and a lot more coming your way. I know Mr. Elopon is waiting for this. That is the SpaceX where that is flying to space, the International Space Center today. I know that he's waiting, whether he's sleeping in now so that he will not miss the launching. We'll be having a look at all those stories. But those are some stories making the rounds in the world today. Stay tuned. Don't go away. It is Starr Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. Let's enjoy this song from Joe Metal and the Better Revival Choir. And that is Vogome, and I will be with you. God bless.
Archie, Machonyeji, Machonye Luse, Awada, Namabu, Esiani, Machonye Gbe, Machonyeji, Machonye Luse, Awada, Namabu, Esiani. For my way, Machonye Luse, Awada, for my way, oh, Machonye Luse, Awada, Namawu, Israel. For my way, Machonye Luse, Awada, Namawu, Israel. You can give the Lord a dance in this place. Come on. Alevisi wobula, Alevisi wobula, Alevisi wobula.
This is Starr Radio UK, leading African radio station.
Oh, Mika free, hallelujah. Midwideji, Oziana, Mika free, hallelujah. Mika free, everybody say Mika free, hallelujah. Midwideji, Oziana, Mika free, hallelujah. Oh, Mika, sing hallelujah, hallelujah. Come on, catch it. Come on, clap your hands on it. Come on. I tried it. Somebody give the Lord a dance in this place. I can see you dance in this place. Everybody. Dela Yesu Domenye.
Benedicta Ayahle, good morning to you, Hansen and Sedu, wherever you are. Massive good morning, and okay, Uwusu. We salute you from Starr Radio UK. Thank you very much for joining in as well. It is Starr Radio UK, and lots of music going to be coming your way during the course of the program, but wherever you are, stay tuned, don't touch the dial. Let me take you straight to some of the details of the stories that is making the rounds this morning. gentle and the best way of our choir for inspiring us this morning, wherever you are. I see people rejoicing and giving thanks to the Almighty God. The good book says the joy of the Lord is our strength. It's been their strength, and therefore, let them rejoice. You can also do the same. Continue to listen to us on Starr Radio UK. Okay, Starr Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. More music will be coming your way during the course of the program. Don't you worry at all. It is the morning show. And let me say good morning to Jean Alate, wherever you are. Thanks for joining us as well. So as many people who have joined us, all the presenters on Starr Radio UK, we salute you all wherever you are. Apologies. We take lots of calls and lots of information to make the program what it is. But let's quickly move on to a couple of the stories that I've touched on. Now, yesterday in the briefing, the COVID-19 briefing that took place, information coming through from the health secretary was that they were going to have a look at the penalties that were awarded, were given to people who traveled with their kids, maybe taking them from point A to B, as they will also say it was very, very essential to them. However, just after last night, so less than 12 hours, government has come in to do a U-turn. Government has come in to do a U-turn that they're not going to be looking at that. But what is your take on it? Now, if you traveled with your kid, taking him or her from point A to B, maybe taking him or her to maybe your partner to take care of him or her, and then you were given a ticket. I want you to give me your ears. I want you to come on and let us know exactly what you are thinking, what you think. Do you think that is a fair game? And as the saying goes, what is good for the goose is good for the gander. So what is it? Well, we want to hear more from that. But some of the other stories making the round, schools and businesses could see local lockdowns. During the update yesterday, now there was local lockdown, could see schools and businesses targeted in areas of England that flare up coronavirus. The community secretary has said. Now, Robert Jenrick said restrictions could be introduced at a micro level to control the virus in particular communities. The measures will be part of the test and trace system to be introduced next week, he said. Now, Health Secretary Matt Hancock will give more details shortly. Mr. Jenrick added, Mr. Hancock first mentioned the local lockdowns during Tuesday's coronavirus briefing. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Boris Johnson will be questioned by senior MPs later amid continued calls for his top advisor to resign. On that story, more than 35 Tory MPs have called for Dominic Cummings to stand down or be fired after details of his 260-mile journey to County Durham during lockdown came to light. Okay, so we've got all those bits to look at. But the first situation that I'm looking at is the local lockdowns. Now, over the weekend, and over the weekend, and then the week, because people are on lockdown, people are not going to work as they normally will. There's been the tendency that people flock to the beaches. So there's been a case where some of the beaches have virtually this morning, some of them are saying they're not going to be allowing people who have not booked to come into those communities. Now, so assuming people travel from other areas to move to a particular community, and therefore the infection rate there goes up, do you think it is fair for those communities to be locked down? Somebody say yes. For us to curtail the spread of the disease, it has to be locked down. Of the virus, it has to be locked down. However, then those communities can also now say that we will not allow you people who don't live in these communities to come into the community because there's a tendency that you could infect us and therefore will affect us by, we having a total lockdown. So what do you think about all that? We'll be having a detailed look at it. It is Starr Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. The time now, 10:54. Now, on other stories making the rounds here in the UK, MP says he was 200 miles away
after party claims. Now, Rob Roberts says he was in London, but his family had been reminded of government's lockdown. So he is trying to say that to show that, to justify his call that the move by Dominic Cummings was a wrong one. It is Starr Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London, bringing the time now to 6 minutes to the top of the hour. I've been joined by Mr. Frank Davis, who is in the house. I'll be going to him. But yes, stay tuned. Like I said earlier on, exactly at 11 o'clock, we'll be having Mr. Olayomi Koike, who's going to be joining in to bring you updates from Nigeria. The lines will be open at 11:30. My apologies, 12 o'clock. The curtains will be brought down for the Wednesday edition of the morning show. But let me go to Frank. Frank, good morning to you.
Archie, good morning, and good morning to all our listeners, wherever they might be, and our viewers. We welcome them to yet another edition of the morning show where we do what we know what to do best, to talk.
Okay.
Talk.
We are here to talk.
What we do is to talk. That's what we do. Gina, good afternoon. Good morning.
Morning.
Hey.
Before they come and see you.
We are not in China. We are not in Wuhan province. The genesis of all these problems.
First of all, how have you been?
I've been very, very good. Just following the news as they filter in the letter that has been signed by some MPs.
35 of them.
Yes, calling for
the resignation of Dominic.
I strongly object to and disagree. We've been managing. What can we say?
Okay, that's good. Now, interestingly, you just touched on Dominic Cummings' issue, so let's go straight on that. And then, now, yesterday, during the press briefing, the Health Secretary Hancock, they say that, look, with what has happened, because some people, genuinely parents, I mean, you were talking about your case where you were of the view that if it had happened that you had to rush out, take your kid, you would do it before even the phone. You'll be on your way.
I stand by that.
Okay. So now people are asking, the health secretary said, yes, we're going to look into all that. We're going to virtually, if you can substantiate that you were on the move with your kid, maybe taking them there. Then less than 12 hours, they done a U-turn. They said they're not going to be looking at it. Now there's another case where another MP was saying that when the lockdown came into force, he was 200 miles away from his family. But he still put where he was. He could have said that I need that definitely to go there.
The difference between the family being away and being faced with an emergency they are two totally different scenarios.
Okay.
Look, when your family is away and there's a lockdown, you feel like homing. You want to be home. You want to miss those banku, the Yorkshire puddings, the turkeys, and probably you even think of a bit of lamb you might have gone to the butchers to get, and your wife has promised you a nice meal over the weekend before lockdown. Therefore, you are forced to say, and then dreaming of your lamb and other, chocolates and other, probably you even have pot that you just bought that you want to drink over there. Those are totally different scenarios.
Okay.
When confronted with issues to do with emergency, where the safety of a child is involved, we are not talking of just a family. We are talking of a situation where a vulnerable child is involved. Archie, I will do it. I still stand by that.
Okay, good. You do that. That's okay. Accept it. Because you are looking at it, that it's critical.
So that MP justification, he was 200 miles away. For me, it's below the belt.
Okay. He's saying that if people are claiming that he also traveled, and he's saying he's not traveled, he's been 200 miles
even if he's traveled, he should provide evidence that the family were faced with danger.
Okay, the daughter was going to have a birthday.
But birthday is not danger. We all had our birthday. Even the queen herself had to escape from her 21-gun salute to go and hide.
Okay.
The queen was not in danger.
Okay.
But the queens, had to flee.
Okay. Listen, we'll take a commercial break and we'll be with you. Stay tuned.
Hello, lovely listeners. Tune in to the renewed show with Charlotte. Make it a date to listen to me this and every Thursday at 5 p.m. on Starr Radio UK. Tune in to an hour of power an hour of encouragement, an hour to inspire you to stay positive and strong in this season. See you there and listen.
Getting onto the property ladder has never been easy until now. Join us this and every Thursday from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. live on the Property Hour Show on Star Radio UK, where we talk to mortgage brokers, property developers, estate agents, landlord, tenant, property consultants on how to invest or get into the property business and make money. You can't afford to miss this. The Property Hour Show is your best source into the property industry.
Yes, welcome back to the program. It is Star Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. Let me say good morning to Jojo Demens. And thank you very much for watching. And Lydia Unpredictable. Hey, Lydia. I hope you are doing very, very well. Thank you very much for joining as well. Continue to share the page with your friends and loved ones wherever you are. Everyone who is listening to us, share, share, share. But I say all the time, the best way to listen to us is via our apps. Go to your app store, you download it. It is for free. Just go there, download it. And then on the app, you can listen to us and watch us on the TV section of the app. And let me say good morning to Frederica Nunu. Yes, good morning. I hope you are doing very, very well. God bless you. And let me take this opportunity to say good morning to Reverend Dr. Francis Okonunu, Mama Eugenia Nunu, all of Revival City Church, Pastor Samuel Lamte, First Lady Francis Lamte, and all you wonderful people there. We love you to bits, Star in the UK. Okay. Now let's move on. We were having a look at what my colleague, Mr. Frank David, was saying, justifying the move by the what do you call him? The chief advisor to the Prime Minister, Dominic Cummings, and trying to say that this was a priority. Now, all well and good. Okay, so it could be a priority. Now, let's come to the second question, where we're looking at the case where during the press briefing yesterday by the health secretary, he went on to say that, look, everyone who's traveled, maybe with their kids from point A to B, with whatever, all the excuses and all the this and that they gave, there is the need, or there will be the need for a look at the penalties that have been given to them. However, within less than 12 hours, the government has done a U-turn. And people are of the view that, what is the government all about? They said one thing, and the next moment, saying another thing. So what do you think about it? So let me say 12 hours plus, they did a U-turn because we did the press briefing was at 5 p.m. So more than, let's say 14 hours on, and they've done a U-turn. So what do you think? Should those people now also seek legal action to seek their redress on this payment or this penalty that has been awarded? Shall I say awarded? Somebody will say, if you say award, that is a good thing. Issue to them.
Actually, you see, if you do have a case, it's just like CAP. Yesterday I was given I parked somewhere. No, it wasn't yesterday. It was a holiday.
Okay.
A bonkers ticket issuer came to give me a ticket, forgetting that it's holiday, thinking that where I parked, because where I park, you're allowed to park weekends.
Yeah.
Over there. And he thinks that we had a bit of people within the area, so normally where I park, I couldn't park. But where I park, it's a weekend parking.
Okay.
A holiday is classified as a weekend. And he thinks
did you read the sign there?
Oh no, yes. The sign says between 9 and 5 you can.
And it says bank holidays and weekends.
The signs were not legible, so that even if I don't have so I'm going to appeal against So basically, what I'm saying is that if someone feels that they've given them a penalty as probably a direct result of misinterpretation of the rules by the police or misunderstanding of the rules by the person themselves and therefore could not provide the most appropriate explanation to them, that's why we have the law courts.
Okay.
That is why in this country the rules work. Okay. All you need to do, even if you've paid it, is to lodge a challenge that upon proper reflection and interpretation of these rules, and with the information that is coming that essential travels were allowed. What I was doing, my son had a tummy ache, and I was going.
You had to take your son. Okay.
Our tea roll was finished.
Uh-huh.
And I was actually going to borrow tea roll from a neighbor's door.
If you can justify that.
If you can justify that. Are you getting me? So people must go out there and challenge the fines that they've been issued.
Okay.
I welcome that.
Okay. But my problem here is, now, why should government come out to make a statement?
Because
and the next moment, backtrack. I mean, it shouldn't be that way.
The police might have come to say, look, this is enough money to be made. Don't forget, the economy has been struggling.
Yeah.
The economy has been struggling. Some of those projections that they made, they actually look at the breakdown. They simulate that, okay, today we know 20,000 people might not have insurance. And therefore, if we deploy a 10,000 police, we invest in, let's say, 10,000 police patrol cars, and we're able to get even, well, let's say 20% of the 20,000. We find them 500, they go through court, we find them, then we're likely to result in this amount of money. And now, should we escalate it? We are able to take 5% of them out of the road, which means that they will not be driving. So they do all this simulation behind the scenes to know how many people. Actually, do you think everybody wants to obey the law will have lawyers? There will not be jobs.
Yeah, so
the police
we have to get people to be unruly.
So, I mean, naturally, people will get to a point where, I mean, the court and the law will catch up with them. Do not forget, some of the police even do not understand the laws.
Yeah. Some of them don't.
I've had a situation where the police issued me a fine, on the spot fine, because one of my brake lights was not working. And I took it to court and I challenged it and I won. Because all I needed to do to provide evidence that as at the time I was moving the car, the brakes were working.
Yeah, you cannot drive and go.
I cannot drive and have my eyes in the brake distance. So the best he would have done, stop me, give me warning that my brake light will know the time, know the time he gave me. And if there's evidence that I drove past where I could have replaced it or have an opportunity to replace it, I didn't do it, that's negligent. But you cannot just stop me, my brake lights are not working, and give me, am I the Bob?
Especially when it comes to brake lights, when you step on the brake and you come out, you get out to go and look at it, it's off.
Are you getting me? So at the end of the day, that was a fine that was issued. The police, I went to court and I challenged it and I won, because all I needed to do is to provide evidence. And I got someone to also say that when I was moving, they were there at the scene to check for me that the brakes were working before I moved.
I didn't know that when you have to drive out, you let people check your lights. Well, listen, it is Starr Radio UK.
We learn it every day. Archie,
well, this afternoon I'm going to take off. You have to come and check my brakes.
Archie, all I'm saying is that there are various ways to kill a cat. So at the end of the day, some fines will come. You look at them, say these are not fines that make sense. They don't have to be paid. So all you need to do, what a reasonable justification to let you out of those traps. And please, they stop your brake is not. Oh, some of them are reasonable. Some of them are reasonable. They will let you go, and they will give you a warning. In fact, that's what they're supposed to do. Your brake lights are not working. I drove to Canterbury, and when I got on, is it 8-2 or something like that, the police was following me. They followed me. It was night, around 11.
I remember that it is about a couple of years ago.
They trailed me all the way. They stopped me, and they said my lights were not working. I said, I didn't know. They gave me a notice. The time they spot me. The time they stopped me, because they know at that night there was no way
cannot do anything.
I don't have a spare bulb anyway. But if they stop me again, and they find out that I mean,
then you would have.
But there are some police who just come, your brake light's not working fine. I drove a friend's car again. We just talking within fines. I took a friend's car, Millicent's car. She came to the office. I drove it. I left my car. I was going to this thing. One brake was not working. I have brakes issue. They stopped me. He said, am I permitted to drive this car? I said, I'm permitted to drive the car because I have comprehensive insurance. They can say I have to, because I don't have the license on me, and his radio was not working. He couldn't check.
If his radio is not working, is that your problem?
So I have to. Can you just imagine? Archie, so there are issues that fines should be issued, but the rules are there. I've gone to court to quash a lot of fines.
Okay.
They've issued me 6 points that was removed from my license.
Okay.
Are you getting me? So people giving fines in this, if you can prove that what you were doing was essential, and especially when it comes to vulnerability. When it comes to vulnerability, look, Auntie, they said parents should stay at home.
Yes.
Do you think if I have a parent here who called me that my food is finished, I wouldn't find a way of delivering food to them?
He will find a way of delivering food to them. We have got Mr. Olayomi Koike. He's also sitting quietly. I don't know whether he's got some penalties before. John, good morning to you.
You can't be in a country that is so civilized and sophisticated, and no matter how intelligent as an African you try to avoid it, one day the law will catch up on you. But as an African, we are so sophisticated, we can also use that law to fight back the law as well. My name is Olayomi Koike. Welcome to all those that have been watching us. Good morning, Mr. Archie. Good morning, Frank. I have listened carefully to Frank, and that then takes me back. Whether we can achieve these anytime soon in our life in Ghana and Nigeria, looking at what you've just narrated.
That is a question that will be answered maybe by and by. But let me say good morning to R.A. or Ra Walker. Thank you very much for joining us. How are you doing, Mr. Yomi?
Well, I'm very good as usual. And one thing is, the more you live in this world, the more you have to remember that, the world itself is not just for you alone. And if you think you are the only one on this earth, you would just be amazed that there are so many creatures that the wonderful Creator has created. And as long as you are breathing, you just have to be grateful. From the window view, where I can tell you, I've been out this morning. It's very warm outside. The weather is very beautiful, but one thing is we must continue to give the Creator the blessing of being alive.
Yes, we have to give the Creator the blessing of being alive. We have to be grateful to God. Now, with the conversation that I was having with Frank earlier on, let me ask you maybe your take on it. Now, if you happen to have maybe your kids, and then you have to emergency, you have to go to them, or you have to take them to a place where they could isolate, or you could isolate because of what is going on, would you have done it? And if you have done it as well, and you were given a ticket, would you have challenged it?
Oh yes. One thing we've got to remember is every case are different. If my mom that is about 20 minutes away from me, that I know that the council has done everything to keep her alive by doing whatever she needs and making sure that her prescription and everything gets to her. But she still called me at any point and say she needed water, and that water has run out in the house, and I have to take every precaution to make sure that I get there safely, but then maybe get penalized because I've driven my car that doesn't have an insurance. I would then come back and give the law the reason why, maybe to save that life or the insurance. So there's a lot of cases around it. And I remember he did ask me whether I've got a point on my license before. I would say yes, and that was about almost 10 years ago. Now, as much as I don't drive a lot, I love to be on the public transport and have the view of what London looks like. Because a lot of people are living here and they will never see what London looks like, because if you're driving, your focus will be on the road. And yes, it was just sometimes, like Frank says, some of those officers that look at you and say, you know what, I'm just going to give you that ticket and then you can go and challenge. They know that you will challenge it, but they just want to prove to you that they are in charge at that moment. And sometimes, because as Africans, we speak with our voice a little bit up, and they want to take it to another dimension. And if you're not careful, you might be roped into something else.
It is true. It is true. I mean, there is an issue that is going on in Minnesota at the moment where the police are on arresting one black guy, put their knee on his neck, and the guy was saying, "Look, I can't breathe. They didn't hearken to it. The next moment, they had to put him in an ambulance. The moment he's dead. Okay, so there's lots of unrest there, but we hope that that we find ways and means to go about our duties without, I mean,
and when you're a black man, for instance, we are not going to digress though.
Mhm.
When you're a black man, the presumption is that you are violent by nature.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
presumption
Yeah.
motive that they approach you.
Mm.
With those one for the guy who has died, man, they are so and all others who have died as a result of unjustful abuse by the state,
Mhm.
which should be protecting them. We say, may their soul rest in perfect peace.
Yes. Sly Papa Aho, good morning to you. Thank you very much for joining us as well. Nigeria records 276 new COVID-19 cases. Total now 8,344. Interesting. It's going up. We've not reached the peak yet. Yomi.
We're not yet any close to the peak of this virus in Nigeria. They're giving us around July when it's going to get picked up. And that means, could it have doubled up, tripled up? We will have to wait and see. Yes, you're quite right. The number has literally gone to 8,341. We, as at February, had the first index case from Italy, a consultant. And now community spread is what is taking place across the country. And now the battle now at the hands of the government is to see how these can be curtailed as quickly as possible. Lagos State, which is the major center of this coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, now have a total of 3,756. A lot of people have been discharged. Kano, 923, and FCT, where I will put a stop on that, also have 519. What that means quickly means as much as people are being discharged and the number continue to grow, that means the resources also becomes a pressure. Look, we saw the the Nightingale Hospital was put up quickly, in as much as we couldn't fill it up. Do we now have the manpower to continue to cater for this total number in Lagos? Lagos is still coping. How far can they cope? We will have to wait and see at the test of time.
Archie, yes.
There's something that Olayomi just said, which for me, we have to question. You see, the issue about peak period is a big kind of dodgy.
Yeah.
A lot of times we've heard people say peak period, peak period, peak period. Ghana, for instance, we've had more than 3 peak periods announced by the authorities. Now, my understanding of peak period, and if you look at what happened in the other part of the country, when they look at peak period, it's not the issue about necessarily the numbers will start going down, but the rate of infection, which is very, very key. The rate of infections will go down, which means that the daily uptick in those, you can see a gradual
drop.
When Ghana announced that we near first peak, we're 2,000 cases. As we speak, we have 7,300 cases in Ghana. So the peak period, we've had peak period announced more than 2-3 times, with a daily increase yesterday for almost 150 something in Ghana. All right. So if Nigeria is saying they are anticipating that peak period will be in around July, what are they doing? Are they testing more? Have they increased their tests? What the daily testing capacity, which for now where we see it is still below belt? Are you getting me? So are they cases that you are missing out? So they shouldn't, this peak period, they shouldn't use technical languages to bamboozle their ways through. You know.
Olanrewaju Alameji Kafu. I hope I didn't butcher your name. Good morning to you. Nana Ama. Olanrewaju. Okay. Kafu. Good morning to you. And Nana Ama Odruwa. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. Don't you worry. At the moment, we have only Mr. Olayomi on the screen. We'll be talking to him while the program goes on. The Democratic will be working behind the scenes. Now, so when it comes to the lockdown, has it all been lifted? Are people just going about their normal duties? Or there are some areas where there seem to be some restrictions going on at the moment?
Well, there's still a bit of restriction in terms of the interstate lockdown that is still, happening around the state. And likewise, Kano State, I believe, might be coming into the final 2 weeks that was added to it. What would happen? We will have to wait again. Whether the president will eventually come out and address, or that information will come out from the presidential task force on COVID-19 that have been giving us the daily briefing from Abuja.
Okay. Listen, this is Star Radio UK. Mr. Lami Koike bringing you updates from Nigeria. Vincent Benga Akimbolade. Good morning to you. Thank you very much for joining us as well. Let me go back to Yomi for the other updates. Yomi, over to you, sir.
Just before we move away from the COVID-19, it seems also, as we do know, every country has put some measures in place, but in a country like Nigeria, where everyone now, is categorized as a COVID-19 patient, and sometimes a lot of the hospitals are rejecting, patients coming through their doors. And that takes me to this particular story that is in one of the dailies in Nigeria. A man identified as Joe lost his life after he was allegedly refused treatment at the Isolo General Hospital in Lagos State over the fear of being a COVID-19 patient. It was gathered that Joe slumped on Sunday while playing football, was rushed to the hospital, but was allegedly refused treatment on the fear that he might be a COVID-19 patient. And that shows that COVID-19 is also becoming where hospitals are also not just taking patients in, but also rejecting some from what that story says there. I will go on as quickly with some of the updates, and then we can review them in more details as well. This is Star Radio UK, your finest African and Caribbean radio station. The best way you can listen to us on a daily basis is by having the app downloaded through the iOS or Android, and you can be rest assured to get the best out of the platform. Update: Nigeria record 279 new cases, taking us to 8,344. Nigeria lucky. I'm not sure whether Nigerians will be happy with this statement, but this is the statement coming out from the media aide of the president. Nigeria are lucky to have Buhari as the president of the country, additional. Not that every Nigerian will disagree with that, but I'm sure a lot of Nigerians will want to ask questions surrounding that statement. Also, Christian Association of Nigerian met worship centers reopening. We do know that most religious places are not yet open here in UK, but it seems that is the other way around in Nigeria. Stop Northeast troops from using phones. It seems some of the troops that are using mobile phone to record what is happening in the forefront and getting that out to the social media space, the rep doesn't seem to be pleased with that. Could it be something that they want Nigeria not to know? Or if all is going well, the troops should not be releasing pictures and images and videos of what they are going through at the forefront of fighting the Boko Haram, which this particular government came on to say they will fight Boko Haram when they were campaigning in 2014 and their second term. Lautech Hospital threatened mass burial for unclaimed corpses. We know Lagos State Governor, as of 2 weeks ago, I had him during one of the speakers, people that have their dead bodies, please come and take them. If not, we will have to do mass burial for them. A lot of people must have abandoned their dead bodies, looking at the COVID-19 as another obstacle because of the hospital and other cases. I can't step down for Ondo State Governor, says Kekemek. I hope I pronounced that as well. COVID-19 cases in Ibadan firm rise to 151. Each of the states now are getting the numbers rising every day, and that means it will put pressure on how the staff have to cope with some of these. Let's push quickly, and then I can come back to you in the studio as well. FCT arrests 29 Lagos-born commercial motorcyclists. 6 trucks, as we know, interstate is still happening. Ex-Ebonyi SSG in a Baba world over a 2 billion naira loan. Pirate ambush police escort and kidnap 2 people in River State. Also, again, El Rufai, it looks like Kaduna State Governor is pushing it by the continuation of the lockdown for another 2 weeks. Castina orders lockdown resumption in 3 local governments. Family bars sympathizer as Egbaland chief imam is buried. Amputee students shot by soldier to sue army for 1 billion naira. COVID-19, Nigerians in Malaysia are set to return home. More Nigerians are still stuck outside, and the government said they're doing everything to return them back home. Well, continued solidarity trial for hydrochloroquine, according to NAFDAC. Buhari didn't cancel appointments signed by the late Abba Kaira, that's the presidency. So there was information that the appointment that was given to a few individuals was cancelled by the new chief of staff. 3 decomposed bodies found in Delta State, Obiano, Anambra. Others, isolation rooms in hospital. An FCT minister donates salary to secure prisoners' release. 875 people committed suicide during lockdown. I think that's not in Nigeria, that is in Nepal. Let me go back one more story, come back to you. IMF advised banks to suspend dividend payment, and then takes me back to you in the studio. Star Radio UK, your finest African and Caribbean radio station in London.
Yes, that is Mr. Laimi Koike bringing you updates from Nigeria. Mr. Daniel Kweku Datsun, wherever you are, massive good morning to you, and thank you very much for tuning in to listen to us. Like I said, I think the technical team is working assiduously in the background, trying to get the system working. But we have Mr. Laimi on. Don't you worry, he's giving the updates. So let's go to him for some of the issues that he raised. Now, first of all, let's touch on the first story. Buhari is a blessing. Buhari, Nigerians or Nigeria is lucky to have Buhari at this time. Now, how have people rated his performance during this COVID-19?
Well, they've rated it in different angles, and that means people that might not have access to the palliative, even though they might be coming from the state, but they were expecting the federal government to have done more by supporting them with little donation right directly into those that the government have the BVN. But that didn't happen, and we saw that a lot of people were thrown back out to start making their own source of living. Also, whether a lot of people would agree with that statement, remember this is a president that have not communicated as much as possible as Nigerians would love to see him. And also, the style of the president is different from the style of the former president like Jonathan or Obasanjo that will continue coming to speak to Nigerians. But this particular president have not done that in terms of communication, apart from using the media and all pictures coming out to tell Nigerians that everything is well. Also, I'm sure there will be more reaction on this particular information regarding the president statement that Femi Adesina did mention yesterday, and then I will take it back to you in the studio.
Listen to Star Radio UK. Now, interestingly, well, it depends on where one stands. You score him maybe higher marks or lower marks. So we leave that one for our listeners and those who are watching us as well. But then we have the issue where the government or the CAN is meeting to have a look at worship centers reopening. Now, I know we've talked about this a few times, but what is the edge, especially where we are looking at the fact that the peaking, Nigeria is saying that the peaking is going to be sometime in July. So why do we call or push for churches or worship centers to be opened in June?
Well, the thing is, where is the pressure coming from? There have been this conversation whether it's the best time to open it, but we do know that a country where religion is one of the most powerful tools, for whatever angle you might want to look at it, and who could be the ones are individuals or groups of people that really want all those religious centers to be open, knowing that that would also put more pressure when the infection itself has not really come out of the system at the moment. But I'm sure we would have to wait and see. Some places, some of the states have started the operation of churches going back and the mosque, but it seems everyone really wants that to be up and running as quickly as possible.
Frank.
Archie, you see, when it comes to this church issue, yesterday I sent you a video of Pastor Frank, is it Franco or something, in Cameroon, who claimed that God has specifically anointed him for days such as this to heal COVID people. And according to the report, he was laying hands on people, praying, and whatever have you. That coronavirus, he's curing coronavirus and other things, and he was allowed to pray freely. The church was still meeting in Cameroon. I mean, that's next door to Nigeria. The church was still operating freely. There come to a test to see how spiritual and how faithful he is to his calling. We had the coronavirus attacked him. Within 10 minutes, when he fell down, the family called the doctors, came, rescue him. This man actually fell asleep.
He didn't rescue.
No, he didn't rescue. I mean, he fell asleep because the church members claim there's no way coronavirus could have killed him, and that he is actually in deep sleep and having communication with God.
Okay.
So they actually barricaded the house. No one should come, and we're praying in tongues. I mean, until he's able to wake up. I mean, from the deep sleep. In fact, as we speak now, he's still sleeping in the grave.
And God said, "Oh, that stupid man, come."
He was even buried in front of his house. That is how stupid some of us can be in the name of religion. Actually, I'm a Christian. Knowing what we do in our part of the world, even in this country, laws do work. We observe. Look, you get to a chapel in this country, and people are there to show you where fire exists and others are.
Yeah.
You can't go to a well-functioning registered chapel in this country with a lot of hazards. That you get me? No one is going to, if you can you go and be stepping on a pregnant woman just because you are possessed by the spirit in this country? Can you go to a mosque where the exits have been blocked with someone selling mayafi because Muslim want mayafi? No. Self and safety is taken care of. In fact, it's paramount to whatever you do. In our part of the world, it is the man of God's direction. I've told you a story where in this country, a man came from Ghana trying to establish a church over here, the one next door to us, thinking that the way we operate in Ghana, we can operate here. In the heat of it, someone fell down. He thought it was wrong to call an ambulance because it was God who was testing. I mean, how faithful. How too stupid can you be? So, actually, if the churches can ensure that, look, health and safety, and knowing who we are, actually knowing who we are, I can't vouch for that. I can't vouch for that. And then you look at it. Look, opening churches, who's going to benefit more? That's another question. Who is going to benefit more? The pastor?
Or the government?
The government? Or the people?
Maybe the people. They are
stressed. I have no doubt that belonging to a religious organization has both spiritual and physical positive impacts. I have no doubt. People, depression, there's a lot of evidence, body of knowledge over there that can back the claim that belonging to a mosque, belonging to a church organization or something like that help reduce anxiety. It helps, I mean, believing in something where faith is expressed, help reduce anxiety, help reduce suicide rates and other negative impact that comes with depression and other minor mental illnesses that you have. So that is established as an established, backed by science, backed by religion, and backed by even common sense. Are you get me? But actually, I can also not accept the fact that, look, because of religion, because of faith, we should behave stupidly. No, even the master that we follow did not behave stupid. So for me, knowing who we are, I am not going to vouch for that. I can't vouch for this.
Okay. Listeners, it is Starr Radio UK. We'll go to Mr. Olani Koiki for some more of the updates. Yomi.
Well, I said thank you very much and good morning to my auntie watching, Olajire Joseph, and me, Olaliko, and those of you that are also watching us that we can't pick your name on the tray. COVID-19, jam sprayer after release. NCDC calls Benue index case for another COVID-19 test. The capital importation into Nigeria stand at about $5.8 billion in Q1, and also Karu Mega Park to service FCT and Plateau, Benue, and others, according to Governor Sule. Also, let's take a little bit more. Reps accuse NCDC and IMC of spending billions despite COVID-19. Despite COVID-19, NCDC accused lawmakers of seeking 4.6 billion naira fake payments. It looks like already corruption is now wrangling around the this COVID-19 in Nigeria, as from this report. Also, 800, the H1 profits rise by 938%. 800 export consignment stranded at Lagos Airport. Airline debt may rise to about $550 billion by the end of 2020. As we know, all the countries around the world have been badly hit, especially the airline, the hospitality industry, as no one is flying and no one is going to anywhere. What could make the Ogoni woman protest semi-nuded, demanding demolish hotel? I'll take that again. Ogoni woman protest semi-nude, demand demolish of an hotel, manager release as well. Petrol sold above 130 naira in 17 states, according to the NBS. Naval staff arrest 42 suspected cultists during its initiation in Cross River State. Federal government speed up 10,000 housing unit construction for the IDPs. We do know that the IDPs are still one of the problems in terms of people living in their country as refugees. I will go back again now to you in the studio as we continue to start winding down on the broadcast this morning.
Yes, listeners, Star Radio UK update from Nigeria by Mr. Olamiko Ike. Unfortunately, we have to end the updates from there. But are you coming on tonight, and what do you have for listeners?
Well, yes, there is a lot of programs in terms of our broadcast this evening, where we will continue with our conversation. Make sure you tune in on Star Radio UK, your finest African and Caribbean radio station in London. And I say, once again, to those that are watching us, continue to download our apps. And today, Wednesday 27, Niger Voices will be back again.
Okay, Yomi, let me say thank you very much for tuning in to bring us those brilliant updates. We talk to you later. Have a top of the